Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I too rise as a Labour member to support the bill. I must acknowledge our former colleague, bring back Rick. The Honourable Rick Barker was indeed the Minister to introduce this, and as a former great leader of the Labour Party has often said, it's no good being too right too early, and that was indeed the case with the Honourable Rick Barker. He had identified as Minister and an inquiry initiated by the Honourable Annette King that we did need to update the laws and the legislation around inquiries. It is somewhat sad that the inquiries or the incidents referred to in the SOP here put on the table by the Minister are ones relating to deregulation. Across this country, Mr Speaker, the Pike River coal inquiry into building failure, and now, of course, the dairy industry. All those three incidents effectively caused by deregulation, ineffective regulation and oversight in key areas of our economy. And we hope that this new legislation will provide the ability to have inquiries that do look into the causes, the reasons that we indeed changed the legislation, what was the basis for it in the first place, and why didn't we see the need to update it prior to incidents occurring. The latest one, of course, with the dairy industry. Mr Speaker, I do have some concerns though, and the explanatory note to the Minister's amended bill, or the supplementary order paper says, you know, in improving the legislation tabled by the Honourable Rick Barker, we've got now changes that allow the ability to set the parameters of an inquiry tightly, and that may be useful, but it may also limit the ability of the inquiry to identify the real causes. This is, after all, or the one we're talking about in reference to the dairy industry, a ministerial inquiry. And while people have welcomed that, it's not an independent inquiry. Indeed, we have to acknowledge that. And it goes on to say here, in fact, in clause 14.2, no, sorry, Mr Speaker, if I go back down to in the Gazette, in new subclause 3, the Minister may consult the chairperson of the inquiry before notifying the terms of reference. Now, I guess it's seen as allowing some flexibility in scope. On the other side of that equation, it could be saying that the ministers want the chairperson to know very clearly what they want to find out. If indeed there is adverse ministerial intervention in what we are passing here, that I don't think we'd have the kind of support that Labor is offering to the bill at this point. So we offer our support in good faith that ministers won't limit the scope of an inquiry. While it can't, of course, be total and wide-ranging, the scope must cover the possibilities. The concern I have here in particular regarding the dairy industry, and I've asked the Minister publicly, would he or would they consider widening the scope to assess whether restrictions to resourcing in the Ministry of Primary Industries contributed in any way to the inability of staff to actually carry out their jobs. Now, I suspect that the ministers, in having a conversation with the chair, may not want that kind of outcome. And so we will be looking at this inquiry. We will support the passage of this legislation, but on the basis of good faith that the inquiries will be truly open and transparent. One suggestion made to me at one point was that maybe we should have some Chinese representatives on the inquiry into the dairy industry. I think that is going one step too far, but I know that those customers over there will be looking at the outcome of the inquiry to see if it has been open, it has been transparent, it identifies the problems and indeed comes up with some recommendations to improve and prevent the situation happening again, Mr Speaker. So Labor, in supporting the legislation and the SOP that the Minister has put up, will be stating that we watch this first inquiry with great interest and that we want to make sure there is no adverse ministerial intervention in the outcome of it.
Call Materia Ture.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I just want to make a short call